Welcome to CyberWeek and our Cyber Spotlight series. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group and CyberScoop, and I'm excited to be speaking today with Javed Hasan, co-founder and CEO of Lineaje. Javed, thank you so much for joining us, and we want to talk a little with you about the notion of software supply chain management and the need to really pay fresh attention to that. Was wondering if you could start by just explaining what exactly is software supply chain management and the tools to manage things.
Yeah, so first, a pleasure to be here, Wyatt, with you, and thank you for inviting me. Software supply chain management is an emerging area of security, of cybersecurity. And what we are seeing with software being developed now is that about 70% of the software no longer is written by the developers of the organization that actually supplies the software to you or to anyone else. What happens is we essentially are putting together or assembling third-party components in our software packages. So we'll take some part of it will come from open source, some of it will come from private source, but we put it all together, assemble it, integrate it, and deliver it as a software package. And the interesting thing is that each one of those open source packages that we may pick up or third-party packages that we may pick up as part of a software are themselves made up of other components that are provided. 70% of those are built by other developers, and so on and so forth. So now what we have in software is a deep supply chain of suppliers that all work together in building components that get assembled into products, which again become part of other products. And so a complicated piece of software now may have as many as 500,000 components that are being delivered. So creating a very complex supply chain that now needs to be managed.
Absolutely. It sounds like indeed a complex chain of custody that's also dynamic, right? So what does it take to manage that if so many components are in constant upgrades and development?
And I think you hit upon a great point there that the software is very dynamic. So a company may be updating software. I mean, I think the highest numbers now are about 1 million times a day. So think of it. And they're pulling in updates from all the entire supply chain every time they do it. So that lots and lots of changes are getting into a software that's changing 1 million times a day. So what it requires is an ability to manage change at that volume and know exactly what changed, when did it change. And because the change is so high, what is happening at the same time is that attackers are taking advantage of this rate of change and saying, we can insert some compromised packages inside the supply chain and then deliver that through a trusted supplier or software supplier to thousands of customers. So that creates a very dangerous set of situations for software.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious, so if you have probably hundreds of different components and software developers, how do you have the visibility to see all of the moving parts, the changes, and guard against those that would want to compromise it?
So the industry and the government mandates have driven us into a very specific direction to manage that, and that is called a software bill of materials. So a software bill of materials is very much like a manufacturing bill of materials, is about all the components that make up a software. And every time any component changes, you get a new version of the software bill of materials. So that allows you to then say which component came from where, how deep, and what are the subcomponent it has, and how and when is it changing. And then there are now government mandates that are asking us to attest to the source of every component. And so now if you sort of put together the software bill of material with an end-to-end attestation, it now helps manage the full software bill of materials. So now there's a method to the madness. And so that's being required, and that sort of becomes a great new initiative to improve the quality of the software that we deliver to our customers.
So is the onus of responsibility on each of the component developers to attest to the validity and security of their software? Or does a tool like yours give an agency or a critical infrastructure organization a central view of all of the software under its control?
So Lineaje delivers a product called SBOM 360, which is a manager of software bills of materials. So what we can do with that is put together hundreds of software bills of materials that a company may need, and essentially attest to the full integrity of the full supply chain that is behind it. So we essentially automated what used to be a very manual process and making it much simpler for organizations to handle the volume both the width of the software product they use and the depth of each one of them.
And kind of looking at the other side of the coin, what's the challenge or the problem if organizations don't seek to manage this chain of custody?
So what we've seen is an dramatic increase in what we call supply chain attacks. So they increased 650% in 2021, and 2022 is of course a bigger challenge than that. And because state actors are also involved, and critical infrastructure uses software as well. So what we are starting to see we are seeing is that state actors are also going upstream to compromise components of the software that are in popular packages, and that gives them a way into organizations they won't be able to get otherwise through a very trusted path.
And then looking into the future a little bit, as software increasingly manages devices and the Internet of Things as well as IT, does this kind of software that you're talking about kind of address that broader landscape of things operating on today's networks?
It absolutely does. It's sort of, if you sort of look at the cybersecurity industry, we are focused mostly on making sure that things run secure, not necessarily that they're built secure. So now what this focuses is, can we build secure software? And of course we can. And with that, in general, it actually has an effect on all segments and all software. So I'm very optimistic that we will actually improve the build quality of all software as well as we go down this path.
Terrific. And then I guess one last thing is, in the federal government, you're familiar with things like FedRAMP and cloud services. Do you see a future where the software that you're talking about can kind of align with both FedRAMP and the ATO organizations that also have to do attestation, so that everyone can be sure that their software is in fact up to date?
Yeah, and actually the federal government has taken the lead around the compliance side of this, and the White House passed an Executive Order 14028 that is sort of leading here in terms of setting the standard, the compliance standard for all federal purchases and defense purchases. So I think that is the single biggest timely driver for the industry to get its act in order.
Very interesting. Well, Javed Hasan, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us a little bit about the idea of software supply chain management and protections, and why it's an increasingly important area for IT and officials as well as upper management to really pay attention to.
And thank you, Wyatt. It's my pleasure to be here.